Hey, what is up, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 158.
We're getting old.
We are getting old. We're so ancient. Tonight, a real fun episode. I'm actually really excited about this because we have two guests that are fantastic people. Brian Morrison is joining us on the show, which I'm excited about. We're going to talk a little bit about A Decade On, which just dropped. We can talk a bit about that and kind of what it's like for him to see the movie now public. We're also going to talk about the Chuckanut 50k, which Brian and I both ran on Saturday and is put on by Krissy Moehl, who we've had on the show before, and she will be joining us just about halfway through this show because she's currently walking her dog. So we'll be having her join as well. So we got Brian, Krissy, we got Kim, we got myself, we got you.
And Gus.
Somewhere. He's going to start snoring halfway through this show. So welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live. Very excited about tonight.
Yay!
Yeah, let's get started. Ginger Runner. Yeah, what is up, everybody? Happy Monday. How are you? Oh, cheers.
Clink.
Clink.
This beer's pretty good.
It is actually pretty good. We're both drinking
I didn't
tonight.
know what to expect.
Taft's Ale House. This is brought to us again from tour. Brian, this was one of our tour beers.
Oh, wow.
From the South here. It's absolutely delicious.
It's pretty good.
It is pretty good. Happy episode number 158, everyone. Happy Monday. Glad you guys could join us tonight. If you're watching live, welcome. Kim, what are you doing tonight?
Just hanging out.
Cool.
No, as always, you guys, I will be in the chat room fielding questions. So if you guys have questions for Brian or Krissy, please ask them in the chat room. That's
right. Tonight we are joined by Mr. Brian Morrison and Ms. Krissy Moehl. Brian Morrison, we've had on the show before, and we just released our documentary following Brian over the course of 10 years from 2006, almost winning Western States, to 2016. Finally completing Western States. The movie's called A Decade On. I'm going to introduce him here in just a second. And of course, Krissy Moehl, the race director for the Chuckanut 50k, which just occurred this last weekend, which both Brian and myself were at. She's going to be joining us about halfway through the show. She's currently walking her wonderful, adorable dog, who I got to meet this weekend. But she will literally be popping in probably in the next 10, 15 minutes or so. So we'll have her and talk to her about the race and all this good stuff. But let's start, of course, with Mr. Brian Morrison. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am wonderful. And the two of you?
We are good.
We're good. I feel a little bit jealous of Brian because I feel like he's had like a better relationship with you this year. Not me, but I feel like you guys have spent more time together than your wives have spent with each of you. All of your wives.
I mean, it's true.
All of our wives.
It came out weird.
Because Brian and I, we went on tour with A Decade On to the South, with Southeast. We did some West Coast stuff. Yeah. So yes, Brian and I have been traveling.
You guys saw each other again this weekend.
We saw each other again this weekend. So Brian and I have hung out more than I have hung out with my wife, and Brian has hung out with his wife.
It's true.
It's true.
And even
it's been amazing.
It has. It's been so much fun.
Should I step out?
No, stay here.
Okay.
Again, a reminder, if you have any questions tonight for Brian or Krissy, please drop them in the chat room.
Yes.
We've got lots of time with these guys, so it should be a lot of fun. So Brian, look who's also joining us. Yeah. What's going on, Amalia? This is Amalia Morrison. Hi.
Can you say hi? Wave to him.
Hi.
Amalia, you were made famous in the movie A Decade On. You were running with your daddy at the very end. Was that fun? Yeah. Do you ever want to do it again? No.
Can you tell us, did you know, what's your favorite thing that Ethan and I do on Ginger Bits?
Duh.
What's the thing we do? Can you just tell him that one thing?
Check Facebook.
It's awesome. So that, for those who don't know, is your daughter.
That was my son, actually.
I'm so sorry. I make that mistake every time.
No, that was my daughter. Jack's being very shy. He won't come on.
I am not very shy.
Oh.
So Brian, the movie came out on Friday. It dropped. This is kind of your first chance to kind of talk publicly since it came out. What does it feel like to have this now out for the public to see? What's the response been like for you? Has your life changed? What's it been like over the last couple of days?
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. It's been really just like overwhelming. People are just blown away by the movie. So tons and tons of overwhelming, supportive, positive messages. Yeah, it's like my Facebook is kind of blown up, and emails, and yeah, just on and on. People are really digging the movie, even. So
That's good. What's it been like for Andrea to also see it? Because I know for those who maybe aren't familiar, the movie A Decade On, documenting Brian, it did just get dropped on this YouTube channel that you're watching this live show on. You can go watch it at any time. It is now free for the public to view. So in the movie, we interview Andrea, Brian's wife, multiple times. What was it like for her this weekend? Kind of reliving, because in the movie, we talk a lot about how Western states, she doesn't like it. How was it to kind of relive a little bit of this for both of you guys, really?
It's been good. I still don't think she likes it. I was kind of trying to pin her down on it the other day. We did that one last screening in the store, and somebody really was like, but Andrea, there's all this positive that's come out of it now. And still she wasn't really budging on the fact that, she definitely appreciates the movie and appreciates all the, again, the incredible messages and the fact that people are so inspired by it. But that doesn't really change her overall love or lack thereof, I don't think, for the race. But
has it dug up any memories from 2006 or anything like that, or has it kind of helped put things at rest for you, or do you feel like there's still unfinished business at states that you need to go back? That sort of thing.
No, it's completely put to bed now. Again, I'm not going to say that I won't ever go back, even with Andrea in the other room and she can hear me. But it really has, it's almost like all of this has just been even greater, I think, than having won the race back in 2006 and being just a one-time winner of Western States who's kind of, sort of forgotten about. So anyways, it's taken me some time to realize that, but the movie and the reaction from people and seeing how moved and inspired people are by the story, it's been pretty powerful and incredible.
Two things that I actually didn't know, having documented this and interviewed Brian a number of times and went on tour and answered questions and learned almost every facet of this story. Two things I didn't know that I found out after the movie was done. One, there was that newspaper. I didn't know you had a copy of the newspaper where you're actually on the cover, the local Auburn, I forget it, Auburn.
Yeah, it was the Auburn Journal.
Auburn Journal. So you have a copy of that where it actually announced you as the winner, right? Because that's what the information that they had at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And then also the jacket that you got from Mr. Brian Powell, who's been on the show before, from I Run Far. What was the story behind that jacket? Because that's like super special.
Oh, it's incredible. He sent that jacket to me within 2 weeks of the finish of Western States, as I recall. He sent it to Seattle Running Company. He didn't know my home address, but he knew that I worked at Seattle Running Company, and so I got a package delivered there to me with with his name on it. I didn't know Brian at the time, and a wonderful note attached to it that explained that he really acknowledged me as the age division winner and wanted me to have the jacket. So, I mean, just an incredible display of sportsmanship, and
it's really cool. Yeah, and that the picture of that jacket is on Brian's Instagram, which is at Brian T. Morrison, if you want to check that out. I thought that was really neat, a really cool gesture by another runner of Western States that year. And that's also been a really special thing that I think, Brian, people have been reaching out that were there in 2006, a number of people that just were very thankful that your story got a chance to be told and shared, and it seems like things worked out quite well in the sense that you were able to wrap it up 10 years later. And I think that's really neat. And I want to, before we move on to the show to talk about Chuckanut and stuff like that, I just want to say, Brian, it was an absolute pleasure and an honor to have any part in telling this story. I'm honored that you would allow me to do it. And it's still something that I watch, and it tears come to my eyes, and it's incredibly special and heartwarming. And I will continue to tell everyone that you are the nicest guy that I have ever met and the kindest person, and remind those watching either live or the archive to go to Brian's shop, Fleet Feet Seattle on Capitol Hill in Seattle, and visit with Brian, shake his hand.
People have already come in. So
really, that's great.
That's great.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I would love for people to come in, to shop or not, but I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about it. So.
And like, talk about perfect timing. We were just joined by Ms. Krissy Moehl.
Hey guys.
Hey.
How are you? We've been
Brian too. Awesome.
We've been talking about you nonstop for the last 10 minutes or so.
No way. You've been talking about the Chuckanut.
we were talking very briefly about A Decade On, the movie that we made about Brian, which just dropped. So this is like the perfect segue right into Chuckanut. So great. Brian, congratulations on A Decade On. I'm so excited that it finally went live, and I'm excited that everyone's been watching it. We're at tens of thousands of views, and like the like to dislike ratio is unlike anything on the internet. It's pretty damn like 2,100 some likes and 3 dislikes, and I think those are probably
one of those is from this room.
Right, one of them is Kim. The other one is me. Just to see what happens. And Andrea. Yeah, Andrea's like, oh god,
don't do this again.
Just the jealousy, like, oh, Brian and Ethan, their relationship's too strong. Dislike.
Yeah. So let's we'll move on to the show here, because we have like a 3-parter sort of. So we talked about A Decade On. What I want to talk about now is this incredible race in the Northwest, which most people have heard of. If you're in the ultra running world, you've heard of it. Maybe you've run it. Maybe you've run it a lot. And my 2 guests tonight have a very close relation with this race. It's called the Chuckanut 50k, which takes place in Bellingham, Washington. This was my first ever running of this race, and it happened to coincide with the 25th anniversary of the race. So we're joined by, of course, Mr. Brian Morrison, who actually, speaking of A Decade On, has run this race now 10 times. So this is his 10th running of Chuckanut. And we're also joined by Krissy Moehl, the race director for the Chuckanut 50k. Fresh off of a weekend that I can imagine was quite crazy. Did you have a successful weekend, Krissy?
Oh my gosh. We had such an awesome team this year that it just made it. Yeah, it made it. I mean, the weather really challenged every aspect of it. Brian can speak to the amount of mud that was on the course and what the complications rain brings to a PA system, or like putting the awards out, or trying to keep the trails in good shape. Anyways, yeah, the weather tried to knock us down, but we had so much great support from the community, and I had 3 amazing co-RDs, and we only met in October, and so the 4 of us worked really well together. It was very, very evident on race day how much preparation we did together to get to know each other, so that when race day came, it really did flow in spite of like what could have been some major hiccups.
So I think because we have some unique individuals on here that can speak to the history of this race, I want to talk a little bit about that before we get into like recaps and that sort of thing. So Krissy, you've been the race director now for 15 years. The race has been around for 25 years. Can you give us a bit of the history of this race? I know that you told me something this weekend regarding the race being the first race in Washington State, or first trail race. I mean, the history of this is deep.
It's kind of cool, and Brian knows it too. Doug McKeever and his friend Richard West invited some of their buddies up. Like, look at that tall boy, perfect placement, awesome. I was really proud of those. I was really excited.
They're beautiful.
Everybody.
They are amazing.
I never do finish. I rarely do awards for every finisher. We try and keep things pretty low key and homegrown. And this year I got really excited about doing tall boys.
Really good.
History of the race. Doug McKeever and Richard West invited a bunch of their friends up to run, and I think there was maybe 12 that first year. And Doug tells some great stories about how he called the parks department the night before and said, we're having some runners tomorrow. And so he always laughs at like the difference in the race then to now. That was in '93. I ran it as my first ultra in 2000. Brian, when was your first Chuckanut?
2002.
2002. Okay, that was the year that was the last time I ran it, actually. So we both ran that year because I couldn't run in 01.
That was a snow year. It snowed the night before.
Yep.
Who won out of these two? I bet one of our live viewers can find out the stat. I bet it's Krissy. Knowing Brian, I bet it was Krissy that won.
I'm sure Krissy beat me.
So it's been 1993.
And then so 2002 was the 10th year for Doug and Richard, and they thought they were done. That was good. And I was working at the Seattle Running Company at the time, and could not let go of my first ultra. There's like a special place in your heart for something like that. And kept kind of waiting to see if anybody else would take it on, and nobody else took it on. And so we came up and met with Richard and Doug, and they handed over the reins, told us everything and the way they'd done it. And I didn't know at 24 I'd still be doing this at nearly 40, but I am. But it's awesome. I love it.
I was going to ask for someone to take on this race and be the race director for so long. You must have some connection to this that's just kind of beyond explanation, I guess. Is it something about the region? Is it something about the Chuckanuts? Is it something about the culture, the people? What is it that keeps you there for 15 years going strong now?
I think it's because this is where I grew up. I grew up looking at Chuckanut Ridge from my parents. I basically have the same view now that I grew up with. And I remember looking at the mountains and thinking they were pretty. And then once I met Scott McCoubry and Scott Jurek, and they drug me up here to run my first Chuckanut, I realized, oh man, you can actually get up there and you can experience these places. So that was like, even though Cougar Mountain was my first place, like actual trail running in the Issaquah Alps and all that, coming home to my, like where I was raised and having a trail experience. And I mean, I chose it. I've moved around 11 times in 11 years, and I live a half a block from the Urban Trail, which is basically the start of the race. Yeah, there's a lot of connection there. It's mostly the community that keeps pulling me back, though.
Yeah. Kim, what do you got?
So I pulled up Ultra Sign Up from 2002.
Oh, boy.
And in fact, Krissy did beat Brian, and she was the first place female that year as well.
Krissy won. Krissy won. So Brian, you got a lot of work.
Brian was last.
Brian was last.
It was my first ultra.
There we go.
Is that true? 2002?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was both of our first ultra. I love that.
That's pretty awesome.
Brian actually placed like 22nd overall.
Which is, damn.
It's fine.
That's actually pretty damn good, Brian Morrison. I kind of wish that it was my first ultra. It was not, but having my connection to the Northwest, I'm jealous that Chuckanut is so many people's first ultra, because it is.
Andrea's first her first ultra as well.
Wow. See, I'm just completely missing out. So, Krissy, then, how do you keep this race growing? I guess with the sport changing and becoming as popular as it is now, and the continuation of more people to the sport, people moving from roads to trails and that sort of thing, with the growth and the changing of the sport, how do you keep it growing without losing that small town charm, that sort of OG style? Because that's all I got when I was there this weekend. Is just, it's still small, it's efficient, the people are rad, and everything is awesome, but yet it's not way too big, too big for its own good. How do you control that?
I don't know. I just love it.
That was a great
I really
answer.
don't. I honestly just love it to be like, I said it in an interview with Trail Manners, because it was kind of in my face aha of going and running around Fairhaven Park, which I just went and did. I just picked up my pup, so she needed to get out for a run because otherwise she'd be barking right now and we wouldn't be able to do this. And I just went and ran around Fairhaven
adorable
Park.
Pup,
I think so. And that park doesn't, except for some few muddy footprints, it's like a blank canvas. And it was a blank canvas, a week ago. And then for us to roll in and pull off the event that we did with the help of, we had over 100, I think we had 120 volunteers. So all these people that come together to make it amazing. And there's like a local pride. Like even when I wasn't living here, I didn't live here for 13 years of race directing it. So
right.
A lot of people didn't realize who the race director was. It was just the Bellingham 50k or the Chuckanut 50k, our local race. So
right.
It never... it wasn't just always associated with me. There's this sense of everybody wanting to make it great. And now that I live in the community, I get to be like, oh, I'm the race director. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. But that didn't happen for, 15 years. But I think I love it to pieces. I do it once a year. I could not do this again. If you know what I mean? I couldn't turn this into a monthly turnkey thing to do it the way I like to do it.
I guess that was kind of the next question. This is the only event that you race direct throughout the year. So is it, I imagine the work starts how long before the actual event takes place?
We all met in October. I put in for my permits in July because I was a little concerned about the 25th and wanting to go big and being back in Fairhaven Park. So that was a little earlier than normal. I would say I usually put in for permits around September. And then, and then I needed to find some new co-RDs. The girl that I had done it with the previous 2 years had started nursing school. So I lost her. It worked out great. She's doing awesome with that. I'm proud of her.
Cool. And Brian, we actually have some questions from the live chat. Let's do that first.
Yeah, a question from Raul in the chat room. Krissy, you've been the RD for the Chuckanut for a while now. Is there anything left to learn about being an RD for this race?
Oh, every year. There's always something. This year we had a mudslide on Chuckanut Drive. And the Friday morning, I went and did a short trail run with a buddy of mine. And I show up at the trailhead, the North Chuckanut trailhead, and there's a road sign that says Chuckanut Drive closed 4 miles south. The aid station parking lot is 5 miles south of that spot. So I was picturing this epic like drive around on I-5 back in through the flats. Unfortunately, he went and reconned it for me, drove down south, and it was 2/10 of a mile south of the Lost Lake parking lot. So I think it's all about being flexible and being able to roll with it. And I think the best thing is planning as best you can so that you're not doing the things that you know how to do in the end. You're able to accept the things that are changing and challenging in the end. So our team did really well with that, being really well prepared on everything we knew how to prepare for and then dealing with the stuff that just kind of came up.
That's great. Now, Brian, having run this event 10 years, not 10 years in a row, but 10 years over, since 2002, how has it changed for you being up there on the ridge now for the 10th time? How has it changed over the years?
Well, so there was the first year, my first ultra, just learning how to run an ultra and not, I'd run a marathon and then I got kind of sucked straight into that. And that was kind of like my backyard because I was going to school at Western and I had started to run with Fairhaven runners, and there were some older runners there that kind of took me under their wing, much like Krissy had with McCoubry and Jurek. I had the same at Fairhaven runners, and they talked me into running Chuckanut, and I didn't really know what I was doing and managed to finish okay. And then I went back for probably like 7 of those 10 finishes, or maybe 8, really trying to race it. So I would say the biggest thing that's changed, it's just the sport in general, but times have gotten so much faster. I remember when it was like Uli, Phil, and Sean Miller were the only ones who'd gone under 4 hours at one point, and now everybody does that.
I think that's a good segue into this year's race, which I wanted to talk to Krissy about too. Growing, or at least being in the sport for the last 5-6 years, knowing the sport, every year people talk about Chuckanut because it's kind of one of the first races of the year where the men and women that are incredibly fast get a chance to turn their legs over and really see what they're going to be doing throughout the season. You get a good kind of first peek at what's up. This year seemed to have an incredible draw. Krissy, did you purposefully reach out to certain individuals? Did some individuals show up purely because they knew it was going to be a fast race? Like, how did this play out? Because both men and women on both sides was just bomber. And
there's been like a buzz about Chuckanut for
weeks.
A while.
Yeah, for a long time talking about this.
Yeah, Trail Runner Magazine did an awesome article. That was cool. I think the 25th anniversary had a lot to do with it. Okay. I want to think I show a lot of passion for this thing. I love the race, and I did a lot of public speaking last year with that book tour, and I think I probably maybe tried to convince a lot of people when I was on the road that they should come run for the 25th. So I like all those pieces, and then I want to say it was in January. No, I think it was right after registration had filled. I got information from USATF and then also from the Canadian team manager that they wanted to utilize Chuckanut as an event as a final qualifier for the World Championship. How do you say that? World 50k Trail Championships.
There you go.
In Italy, which is in June. So the winner for the U.S., the first overall U.S. and first overall Canadian would win those spots. And I think that really hauled some people in. I had to then open some spots up once we had a few people tell us that we weren't be able to come, those automatically went to some people that were interested in running the race. Hayden Hawk was one of those that came on after the USATF challenge. And then I found out later, once the other speedsters saw the way the race was lining up, then they wanted to come race too. So Max King actually got in a sponsor spot. Flora Health sponsored the race. And when I reminded the sponsors that they had 2 athlete spots, Max King jumped on one of them. And I thought he was done with Chuckanut. He'd run it 3 times,
Right.
won it, set the course record, took $1,200 home, call it good. Then he came back and took another $1,200 from him. He set another course record on me.
I mean, that's what's really interesting about this year's race. You talked about the weather. The weather was I mean, Washington State, like the west side of Washington. You guys have seen, I believe the article said that I was reading, 30 hours of sunlight since October. I mean, it's been gray or raining or snowing or some sort of crazy storm since October. You've had almost no sunshine whatsoever. So this race in particular was going to be nasty. Did you expect any sort of course records to drop this year at all?
Max told me the night before at the packet pickup that he was going after the course record, and I told him he would earn it. It wasn't a gimme. The course was not in like the best. There's been years where the course has been in really good shape, and I've been like, yeah, it could probably go down. This year, he earned that. And Hayden Hawk too. He was only 30 seconds back, and they were both almost 3 minutes under Max's old time. So it was definitely everybody that was out on the course that day earned their finish. That was no freebie. There was even some trees down that we weren't able to get out. Doug McKeever went out and chopped steps into them, so they were a little bit easier to get over, and limbed them so there wouldn't be brush over. But yeah, there's those guys earned it this year. Everybody, all finishers earned it.
Now, Brian, you've seen this course in multiple stages of weather and conditions. How did this compare to years previous?
It was very muddy, but given what you just said about the weather we've had, the snow that was lingering up there, I thought it was I was really pleasantly surprised that it was in as great a shape as it was. Definitely muddy, but for some reason I was anticipating worse.
So
I'm
what's
not
interesting,
saying it's fast by any means, but I just anticipated worse. So
I mean, just kind of looking at the general times after the race happened, it seemed like a lot of people, their expectations, you had to add 15, 20 minutes, right? Just because you have mud up at the top, you have mud on some of the climbs, and chin scraper and all these things are a little bit sloppier, a little bit messier just because of storms and rain and sloppier conditions. But yet you see these fast paces. So for those unfamiliar, Max King had the previous course record, which was, I believe, 3:35. There was a lot of talk of, because on the men's side we had David Laney, Sage Canada, Hayden Hawks. We had just an incredible crew of dudes that could have come out here and just blasted it on a decent day. So do you, Krissy, can you kind of walk us through how it played out as far as who came in first and just like how they ended up fighting towards the finish there?
I'm sure there's some, Ellie Green would be the one that could really talk it up this or speak to it better this year. And that was awesome having her and Nancy Hobbs there to.
That was great.
That kind of stuff. So I got some of the updates from that. And then my aid station captains get so excited. So I get like texts from them. So that's really what goes on for me, because I'm pretty wrapped up in what it takes to get the finish line all prepared for the runners. But to answer your question, I had heard that Max was first through aid station 4, and I think he had like an hour and 15 minutes to go 11 miles to break the course record. And I was like, on these conditions, he still has to climb chin scraper. There's no way. Okay, guys, we're good. Like, let's get the finish line set up, blah, blah, blah. And then I get this text message from the aid station 5. Dean sends me a text message that Max is through. And I looked down at I was like, what? And the guys had run the first 10K. It had to have been 36 minutes. And when Max left the aid station, he had 38 minutes to break the record. So if he could run an even split on the end, he would do it. And then I got a text that Sage was 30 seconds back, if I remember right. And then Hayden was another 60 seconds back. And then Hayden closed to within 30 seconds in that last 10K. So he actually ran that 10K faster than Max. And those two, all three of them were flying in the end.
It's interesting to see it in person and then to talk to him after the race. So Max ended up breaking his own record by almost 3 minutes. And Hayden Hawks ended up passing Sage towards the finish. And Hayden was wearing road flats. I want to remind people he was wearing Hoka road flats. So up on the ridge, which was muddy, he had to walk. So he actually had to walk through all the muddy sections because he had no trail traction. He was very casual about this at the finish line, but he mentioned, yeah, I had to drop 5-minute miles, if not faster, just to catch up to Max.
At the end of a 50K.
At the end of a 50K, he's like, yeah, I had to drop 5-minute miles. You're like, what the hell happened? And he finished, I think, 30 seconds behind Max in the end?
And Max looked at me and goes, I didn't know he was that close. Max,
yeah.
The other thing I would say for those road flats up on the ridge is there's also a lot of rock slabs. You can speak to that too, Brian.
Oh yeah.
Not having any like harder rubber. Oh, I looked at his shoes. All I could think was those rock slabs that are along the ridge.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's probably where he was mostly having to like really take his time. I know some people have come back pretty bloody from those rocks, including my sister. My sister ran her first ultra at Chuckanut this year.
Yeah.
It was super awesome. Yeah, not a runner, and she turned herself into a runner this year. I'm really proud of her.
That's awesome. We met her, I believe, at Cascade Crest, and she was super inspired and was crewing you there, and that's amazing. Good for her.
Yeah.
We also had a lot of viewers, actually, Ginger Runner Live viewers who ran this either as their first 50K, return 50K, or first 50K in the Northwest, and they did awesome. It was really amazing to meet so many people that just absolutely loved it and flipped out and thoroughly enjoyed the course. So a huge congratulations to, of course, Max King for course record, Hayden Hawks for chasing him down and treating it like it was a road race, which I can't wait to see what that kid does this year. And Sage Candidate for sticking it out and gutting out a good, solid third place. That kid is going to do some good things this year as well. And on the women's side, of course, we had Ladia, who I believe this was her first 50K. Is that Ladia's first?
I saw that on Facebook today. This was her first ultra and to run a super solid time. I believe it was just like 4:17, just shy of
4:17. Ladia Albertson Junkins, awesome. Which is incredibly fast, and Eo Wang with a real solid second.
Who's been racing a ton
this year.
A lot. Yeah.
And she's super solid. And Rachel Jatton got third place. Just incredible performances. It was really amazing to watch. Brian, what was it like to run this year? Because you have run this, again, 10 times. You've been competitive some years you ran it and the weather was bad, that sort of thing. This year, did you approach it differently? Because I know we saw each other in the car before and you were like, I don't like rain. I don't want to run in the rain. So how did this play out for you this year?
Well, I don't remember what year it was. Krissy might remember. It might have been, I looked back in 2012 was the last year that I run Chuckanut. One of the last times I ran it, it was a similar year. It's super, but it was windier. And I swore I'd never run Chuckanut again. It was that wet and windy. And then, of course, fast forward to Saturday morning. And thankfully there was no wind, but it was definitely wet. So I was having second thoughts for sure, but I'm really glad I finished it. It was, slower. You can't just go into these things without training. So that's my big takeaway.
Well, your last big training block was at the Orcas Island Trail Camp, and I think in 3 days you logged how many miles?
Well, Thursday through Sunday, I think I did like 60 some miles, but a lot of that was just slow kind of course, like hanging ribbon and stuff. So it was a lot of time on my feet, but not quality training.
And how many of those miles were in slippers?
6 of those, I think 6.5.
Okay.
That's
you get
not
like
a lie.
Extra credit for those.
Brian did run 6.7 miles in flip-flops and still beat me. Like
I call them slippers.
Slippers. What do you call them? Sliders?
I don't even know what you call them. Yeah.
I do. They're called not running shoes, which is extremely impressive. What do you think is one of your favorite memories, Brian?
That was not an intentional move on my part.
What is one of your favorite memories from this race, Brian?
One of my favorite memories was actually in 2004. I was leading Chuckanut on the interurban coming back to Bellingham. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to win Chuckanut. And then it hit me. I was like, wait a second. William Emerson is still back there.
Oh, no.
did I think that. Then all of a sudden I hear a little pitter patter, pitter patter. William runs up alongside of me, is clearly feeling a lot better than me, but was nice enough to run alongside me for a while. And not to embarrass William here, but as we're running along, he looks out across Chuckanut Bay and he's like, "Now, Brian, what lake is that out there?" my favorite Chuckanut. And he
Did he pass you?
Yeah, he did.
And just for clarification, it's the ocean, right?
Yeah, it's
The
like
sound.
it's the
Puget
sound.
Sound. Yeah. Did you correct him? Did you like push him over? Like, you idiot. Krissy, for you, what do you think is one of your favorite memories from this race? It could be, from early on. It could be from this year. You probably have 1,000 memories.
So a side story, because I can't answer any questions straight up, but my mom and I tried to pull together what we're calling like the Chuckanut history. Right now it's in like old school binder format, like clear sheets with notes tucked inside and everything. And I'd love to figure out to do a digital way of that. But with the 25th coming up, I just didn't have the headspace to figure it out. But in getting to do that, it makes you reminisce about, do you remember when this happened? And trying to put those stories to the years is really challenging 15 years later. So working on that and doing that, those memories are fun. And a lot of my favorite ones are the ones that the runners never see. They're all the stories that you really hope they don't know that happened behind the scenes. And you're so proud that you're able to pull the race off in spite of what happened behind the scenes. So that's not a straight answer, but there's some good family stories out of that one.
That's great. They'll be in the lore of the race, never spoken on air, but they'll live in the annals of the race itself. We obviously have a lot of live questions here that Kim's pulled aside, so I want to make sure that we get to some of those here. Go for it.
Yeah, a question from Chuck in the chat room. Krissy, does the course ever change, or is it the same every year?
Great question.
That is a really good question, because it has changed. This year was actually really close to Doug's original course, if not exactly the original course. I know of one change. The way $2 crosses, like traverses the ridge, it used to drop down a little bit sooner and went through some private property, and we always had to get permission from that person. They took the trail higher, I don't even know how many years ago now, so that it's not on private property. So that's one thing we'll never get to do, back to the very original course. Otherwise, I think we were pretty dang close this year for the original course. For 4 years, we were down at 6th and Harris, which is a lot closer to my current place of living, which I bought this place with that in mind. We did that for parking reasons, and that was definitely what came up this year. We moved back to Fairhaven Park because 6th and Harris will now be developed into residential and retail. So they're not allowing people to use those parking lots anymore. I was actually kind of glad we were forced back to the park, because it's such a cool scene and it has that more like original nostalgia feel to it. So the course was a little different for those 4 years while we were parking at 6th and Harris.
Yeah, I remember you talking a bit about the final descent down Fairhaven Road versus the single track. I mean, are there reasons why you change the course a little bit each year? I mean, does weather play a part in having to change the course at all in this case? Or
I hope it never does.
Yeah,
I've been worried about that. Last year we had a massive windstorm the week before, and so the week of the race is just my busiest time. I was out running from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. with my mom's little handsaw, limbing trees, taking pictures and telling the parks, and then they'd get out and saw them out. So I was a little concerned that we might have to change things up last year. This year we had snow a week before. They weren't going to let us have the aid stations in their spots, but fortunately that all melted out and we were good to go. I hope to not change it anymore. The big difference, the reason that they went down the trail those last 4 years as opposed to like the road this year, is the road is a little longer, and we move the 6th and Harris is a mile further into Fairhaven. So we had to reduce the course by 2 miles because we were running 2 more miles on the interurban for those 4 years.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. Let's do one more question from the
question from Peter in the chat room. Krissy, what's the hardest thing about being an RD?
Sorry, it totally broke up. What's the hardest thing
about being a race director?
I think it's I am still that I get like I call it the ultra hangover,
Mm.
where you just feel so exhausted, but I don't have like the physical beat up, like from actually having run, but I'm just as tired after. It's a good week of minimal sleep, constant thinking about like one thing, like what every little detail. So I think it's just the fatigue, but not getting that like physical beat down reward as well, like knowing that you physically did something too.
Now, Brian, you did physically complete the 50K. I mean, I imagine over the course of your running this race, this was a different effort than what you would normally do. Did you have do you have bigger plans this year? Was this a race to like lead up to something different? Are you recovering in a certain way? How did it kind of play out for you, though?
I don't really have much of a plan for the year. I was signed up for this. I'm signed up to run Diaz Vista in a couple weeks, and then Starlight Overnight out in Clealum, Gretchen's race. And that's all I have on the agenda for the year. So I don't know. It's definitely not training at this point, but I'm sure there'll be other things that'll come up that I'll do. But I'm mostly into like the adventure run stuff. Like Krissy and I actually did an amazing run over in the Olympics in the fall with some other friends, and that's the stuff that gets me a lot more excited now than running races.
Yeah. What about you, Krissy? Your race directing is essentially done for the year. I'm sure there's still some stuff to do logistically over the next couple of days, but
all these
do you
piles
have
behind me and stuff?
Yeah. I know it's not over yet, but do you have plans for the year as far as like racing or any other things that you are training for?
Similar boat to Brian. It might be just time in the sport. I feel like all of the races have taught me so much about how to be on the trails and how to move through weather and conditions and elements and all of that. And now I want to use it in a different realm. So like that run we did on the peninsula, super cool. And we took a little side trip up this snowy ridge. And there's a time that I would not have felt confident in doing that. But through some crazy race experiences I've had, it seems more exciting and more adventure, and you feel more confident in doing those things. That said, I'm really excited. I've been picking our friend Gary Robbins' brain about the West Coast Trail. Now living,
yes.
Yeah.
We love it. We want to do that. Yes, it's on our bucket list.
Living in the Pacific Northwest and having been here for a year and realizing that I travel a lot, and I have traveled for a lot. I've set a goal of staying within 360 miles of Bellingham. This for the year of 2017. Unless I'm being paid or contracted. So there are things I have requirements for my sponsorships and opportunities, like running in the Run Wild wellness retreat in the Swiss Alps in July. It's a job. I get to go run.
That's awesome.
I'm super excited. Things like that'll take me outside of my 360 mile radius. But so West Coast Trail fits within that. I'm signed up for the Squamish 50-50, but I might have double booked myself that weekend. So I'm hoping I can be up there.
I was going to ask because there's people in the chat room saying that they knew that you were signed up for the 50-50.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
I want to.
So I think the final thing before I have some final words about my race experience that I wanted to talk about at the end of the show here. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Northwest, because that's one reason why I wanted to kind of focus the show on that, since the race happened just this last weekend, but also Kim and I are moving back to the Northwest. What is it about the Northwest? Because I know, Krissy, you direct a race in the Northwest, in Bellingham specifically, and you've lived in the Northwest for so long. You have this draw to the North. You just talked about keeping it within 360 miles of where you live. And Brian, you've lived in the Northwest your whole life. You've trained for all of your races in the Northwest. What is it about this region that draws you to it? Where are your local haunts? Where can Kim and I move? Because we're coming back. We want to know where we can move.
Krissy, Bellingham.
We were talking about Bellingham today.
Actually, today we're heavily talking about it. But what is your draw to the Northwest? What is it about it that feels so magical? Krissy, I'm gonna start with you on this one.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like, because I was living in Boulder, Colorado before I moved back, and chose to actually buy a place in Bellingham, and 300 days of sun versus 300. You just said I got 30 hours of sun since October. Like, what was I thinking? Like swapping that. but I think it has a lot to do with this is where I was raised. This is what I know. This is how I grew up, was in this environment. And it was a tough winter. Now that you say that, maybe I need to find a little bit more sunshine these 4 months, December through about March. What is it? It's the rain, it's the green, it's the people. Like, sorry, Boulder, but like, if it's raining in Boulder, people just wait because the weather will change and you can go outside again. Right. But in the Northwest, if you wait, you're just not going to get fit. Like, you have to get out. And so I just feel like there's this kind of gritty level of people here. Like, everybody's got duct tape on their raincoats and they wear wool socks with their tub. I don't know. I just love Bellingham. They're my people. It's my community.
Did you grow up in Bellingham, or did you grow up just in Seattle or Northwest, or was it Bellingham specifically?
I was 20 minutes south of Bellingham in a smaller town called Bow, and I did everything south. I went to Burlington Edison High School. So Bellingham, that was kind of cool for me choosing it to move back here, is it still felt really new, yet it was familiar because it's so close. I still don't know downtown all that well. I'm getting to know it in my local year. Got
it. Now, Brian, what about you?
You know, a lot of the same things. It's home, so it's really all I've ever known. But there is definitely a grittiness that comes with, you know, living in the Northwest and having to deal with the weather. One of the things Hal Kerner told me when he had moved to Seattle that he really appreciated, having come from Colorado, was the fact that there's really like good trails with great climbing that you can access year round that aren't snowed in. Like, we certainly do get snow up in like maybe the really cool places along the PCT and stuff to go run, but you can go out to, well, Chuckanut Mountain or Blanchard or Cougar or Tiger or Squawk and basically run those year round. I also think there's something about, we don't have a lot of like really tall mountains, so you're not at altitude, but there's a tremendous amount of relief. So you get a lot of climbing, even though you're not, like, Tiger's only what? East Tiger's maybe 3,000 feet or something. Right. But you get a huge run out there where you're getting 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 feet of climbing.
So you're able to train and train for these huge races, despite not necessarily having the giant mountains, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
And there's lots of people in the chat room going, oh, move here. It's sunny here. It's sunny here. I think we can both agree that we actually love the rain. We love the gray and we love the green.
When you grow up in the Northwest,
I lived in Vancouver, BC for years and years and years.
It's part of it. Like, it's part of your blood, really. I always tell people I bleed rain.
And I like what Brian said about like the grittiness of like having to deal with the elements and stuff like that, because there is something about completing a long run or a long race in like terrible rainy conditions that you come out of it feeling like, you know, you feel more accomplished.
A little bit more accomplished. I mean, I remember that with Cascade Crest. Looking back, it's easy to remember that race was the worst storm in the Northwest history, right, Brian Morrison, who also ran it?
I think we could all agree that there's nothing more miserable than like 37, 38 degrees and raining, like that damp cold that you get in the Pacific Northwest. That's funny. My dog just ran downstairs too, right as Krissy.
I wanted to show her off.
Doggy!
Oh, dishes.
But I'm not interrupting, Brian. Yeah, get your puppy there. I'm not interrupting. I just wanted her. She came over.
Doggy show off time.
There we go. They're so cute. They need to run together. They need to meet.
Feel left out.
We are currently getting our dog, so we can have a dog war.
Okay,
so
what's
far,
the cutest pup? No, just kidding.
Just since it's our show, we win automatically.
Oh, yes, you do. Look at that one. Look at those ears.
Sorry, buddy. Are you embarrassed? So sorry. I wanted to before we move into the post show, which I want to remind everybody, if you want to join us for the post show, where we'll have both Krissy and Brian for 10 or 15 minutes, where we can rapid fire questions, because Kim pulled aside a ton of questions. I'm sorry that we didn't get to all of them tonight, but if you would like to join us in the post show, if you are a Patreon supporter already, we'll see you there. I'm going to post the link here in just a couple of minutes. For some reason, my YouTube is looking weird, so I just need to make sure that I can pull the right link and post it there for Patreon. But you will get, if you go to Patreon right after the show, you'll be able to join us for the Patreon post show. If you are not on Patreon and you have no idea what I'm talking about, consider it. It's basically what keeps this channel and both mine and Kim's channel alive. Mile Long Legs YouTube channel. For as little as $1 a month, you essentially keep the lights on and the mics hot. So consider it if you haven't already. Are you grumbling, buddy?
He is.
He is totally. He's like about ready to pass out. So yeah, consider that, and we'll see you guys in the post-show here in just a couple of seconds. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk a bit about my experience at Chuckanut, because I basically I was wrestling with this for the last couple of days, whether or not to talk about it, whether I'm like, you don't be honest, be tough, put out this image that nothing gets you down and that sort of thing. And I had multiple people say, that's ridiculous. Your whole premise is being honest and showing what it's like to struggle and that sort of thing. So I want to briefly talk a bit about the last week. I'll make it very short because we're going a little bit over and we have 2 guests that are patiently waiting. On Tuesday of last week, the plan was to fly to North Vancouver. It was actually to fly to Seattle and then to drive to North Vancouver because I'm currently making a documentary following Gary Robbins' return to the Barkley Marathons. Last week was Gary Robbins' big training session, his last big training session where he wanted to do an overnight where he got 20,000 feet of gain. He just today posted a video that had some footage from that. It's a monster outing. So my original plan was to fly up on Tuesday. As many of you know, I do suffer from anxiety from time to time. I go through long periods where I don't have to worry about it. Sometimes I get basically pounded in the face with it. And on Tuesday, I had like full-on travel panic. And it was terrible. And unfortunately, I had to not catch my flight. I'm being completely honest. And it's one of those things where maybe this will help somebody out there because every time we talk about it, we get a lot of people that talk about how it's helped them. But I had a choice. I had a choice whether to let it beat me for the first time in my life, actually let the anxiety control what my decisions are on my day-to-day, or to nut up and face it in a way that I hadn't yet. No matter how many races I've done, no matter how many predicaments I've put myself in, 60 miles into a trail ultra on a ridge somewhere, I needed to face it and figure out how to kind of get this stuff, how to get on a plane and get to the Northwest so I could run a race and film and do I had obligations and I needed to face all of that. So I managed to find a $70 ticket to Vancouver, by the way.
Which is unheard of. Unheard of.
So the next morning I was able to catch a $70 flight to Vancouver. I managed to go film Gary. During that process of filming Gary, I injured myself pretty bad. For that period of time, which is 2 days before the Chuckanut 50k, and was not ideal. I am about to show you one of the 2 wounds. I apologize, but I'm going to have to do it on air. I am. I just want to show. I don't mean
careful.
Guys.
Oh.
That is a fraction of a bruise.
That's what's appropriate to show on.
Let's just say it goes across. It goes across the butt. That's as much as I want to show. It's extremely painful, but this is what I get for trying to keep up with Gary Robbins during a Barkley training session. So I get to the North Vancouver. That is one side of. By the way, I ran with him for 2 miles. This is 2 miles with 1,600 feet of gain. No one run with Gary Robbins unless you are Krissy Moehl or another elite ultra runner. Brian, I'm sorry, I'm not including you. I don't want you to get hurt.
I don't think I want to be on those trails with Gary when he's going for
pretty nasty.
Wow.
The other side of things was that I popped what I believe to be my psoas. It's just like a tendon or a muscle that it popped during the climb up the mountain. It hurt. Didn't think much of it. And for the next 2 days, I rested and showed up at the Chuckanut start line thinking, you can push through it. My mind, though, told me from the very first step, it was not in the cards. And dealing with that for a large portion of the very first portion of the race, which is all flat, certainly put me in a mind space of failure. And unfortunately, this was the first time that I've actually had to pull out of a race. I am fully contributing it to being injured, and I realize that today that I'm still giving it time. I have to. And I wanted to talk about it just briefly here at the end of the show because it is so easy to put out to the public that everything is fine and look how amazing this experience is, and
I'm having so much fun.
I'm having so much fun.
Good.
And look, I finished this 50k and it was great, when the reality is guys, I suffer from anxiety and it sucks. I have injuries and they suck. Luckily, they're healing. I mean, it's an injury that I know isn't going to keep me from doing anything this year. It's something that will take a week or two to heal, but I'm facing it and I'm making it public. So hopefully some of you guys can do the same for yourself and not put yourself in a situation where you need to act tough just to impress people on the internet, because I promise you it doesn't matter. And it sucks to like put it out there, but I think it's also important. And we are joined by two people. I know Brian very like openly has talked about his experience at Western States. We just did a documentary on it, and that's why I thought this was fitting, was because that is a story where I'm sure there's parts of it where, Brian, you're I guess embarrassed, or you don't necessarily want to talk about DNFing Western States 4 times, one of which was actually canceled, but then you did go back and you finished it. And I'm sure Krissy has had many experiences as an elite ultra runner who's run some of the biggest races on the planet where injury or something kept you from doing it. It's hard, and I think it's something that we need to talk openly about. So that's me putting that out there. I did not earn this. My bib had a little tab that gave me this for free. I did not earn it.
Krissy's gonna make you send it back now.
No way.
Well, here's the deal. So Krissy was gracious enough to allow me to come up and run this race in hopes that I would create a film, which is like all I wanted to do was show off Chuckanut because I know it's a great race. So my question to Krissy is, can I come up and you and I run this thing and I can get like an honor and Kim?
Because I was also supposed to run this race.
And maybe we run like a Krissy runs with us, and we do like a fun video where we get to run with Krissy. Maybe even Brian can come up and we do
we'll get the community out. Yeah, get the
no chugga Brian.
Yeah, no chugga. Brian, you're not invited.
Oh, it's so much more. The more the merrier.
Great.
Oh, hey.
So in the coming weeks, in the coming months, we'll figure out a way that we can do this where I can show off the Chuckanut course for you guys. The parts that I didn't see, because I got to mile 7, the mud started, and I was like, I can't. The mud's going to make things worse. So I basically had to stick to the flat sections. And when I told Krissy, she was like, oh, no, you didn't get to see the good stuff. So we will travel back up. We'll make it happen. And finally, I have to shout this guy out. His name is Adam Faniff. Adam Faniff was a chiropractor at the finish line. He was there providing some of his services at the finish line of the Chuckanut 50k. And he gave me some ART treatments. And I promised him, because they were awesome, that I would shout him out on the show. And if you guys want to go,
in Bellingham?
He is in Bellingham.
Okay.
And I'm assuming some of the local athletes know who he is. He doesn't have an Instagram here, but he does have his website, which is apexchirobellingham.com. Really nice dude, and definitely helped, I think, my healing process. I think that's it. I think I've talked enough.
Yeah, I think you, yeah.
I think that's Kim going, yeah, you should shut up. Okay, so we're going to move into the post show. We've got Krissy, we've got Brian. We'll make it quick, but we have tons of questions here from the live audience. So if you have not already, go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. We'll see you guys there in just a couple of minutes. Krissy, for those who are watching live, where can they find you on social media, and how can they find out more about the Chuckanut 50k for next year? Because I think you're going to be overwhelmed with the number of people that want to run.
There's also questions about the Krissy plan and the book.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah, the Krissy plan, the book.
Is that going to be known? #Krissy plan?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I love it. I got to give credit to Jen and Jeff from Trail Butter. They started that.
Good. Oh, by the way, yeah, of course, Jen and Jeff, Trail Butter, Boggs, Trail Butter, they had amazing samples out there. I already ate mine. I already ate it on the flight back. It was very good. Sorry, go ahead, Krissy.
Sorry, what was the?
Where can they find you? Where can they find out about your book? Find out more about Chuckanut? Yeah.
I'm trying to keep the dog from barking right now. We're holding it's, if you know how to spell my last name, you can find me. It's KRISSYMOEHL. So same website, same for Instagram, same for Facebook, same for Twitter. You got me. If you know how to spell my name.
Reach out.
When does race registration open for the next year?
I think we'll go similar. This year was a month earlier than normal, so the first Friday in December. Usually we do the first Friday after New Year's, but this year I think we'll stick to December. That was better for me for planning. I enjoyed having that extra, even though just a month, it made a difference.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, where can people find you? Where can people ask you questions that maybe are still remaining or don't get asked in the post show?
I'm not really all that present on social media. I am on Instagram now, and that's new, so I'm like super into it right now. But give it a month, and I'll probably be non-existent. on Instagram, at Brian T. Morrison. And then really the Fleet Feet Seattle is the best place to come find me.
Awesome. There you have it, my friends. Take them both up on their social media. Let them know that you guys saw the show. Thank them for being on. And of course, if you have questions that remain, please ask them there. They are both very receptive on social, except for what Brian just said, which is you're probably going to forget about it in a couple of days. But Krissy's fantastic, of course. She has her book out, and there's all sorts of amazing things. So that's it for tonight's main show. Again, we'll have a post show that you guys will definitely want to check out. We're going to be doing that here in just a couple of moments. I'm trying to find the link to the post show.
Yeah, it is not. Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah, for some reason I'll create it so in like 60 seconds to 90 seconds, you guys will find that post show if you are on Patreon. That's it. Kim, any last words?
That's it. That's all.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
we'll see
guys.
you next Monday for more Ginger Runner Live. That's it for tonight.
Awesome.
Ginger Runner.